Howdy y'all, I'm Wayne from Dallas, Texas, and I react to all things UK. Got a video for you here today from the channel Tyneside Life. It's a channel I've started to like. It was suggested by some viewers. I know that several of you also like this channel. But this one is called Who Are the Geordies and What Is Its History? True Story Explained. Yeah, I want to know. I don't know. Lots of you Geordies are subscribers. I chat with you quite a bit, some of you. And yeah, I don't really understand. I know you're from this region, but I don't really know who are the Geordies and what is its history. So I thought I'd get into this video and react to it. So let's get started, right?
What exactly is and isn't a Geordie? Well, first of all, if we go to the English Oxford Dictionary description of a Geordie, it states this: a Geordie is a native or inhabitant of Tyneside or a neighbouring region of northeast England, or the dialect or accent of people from Tyneside, especially Newcastle upon Tyne. But what exactly does that mean? Who exactly does it refer to, and who doesn't it refer to? Do you have to be solely from Newcastle to be a Geordie? What's the history of the term and the word Geordie, and how it eventually became to describe a whole community of people? So in this video, I'm going to tackle some of those questions, and it is really quite a complex.
Yeah, those are all questions I want to know the answers to. You know, you may have seen that I just released from the same channel a video about my reaction to Durham, which I loved. Wow, what a great city. And I was wondering, are the folks from Durham Geordies? Is it only Newcastle? So yeah, he's going to answer all my questions. This is great.
Because along the way, I'm going to dispel some common myths about what a Geordie is and Geordie isn't. And I've looked on YouTube, and I think this is going to be the best description of what a Geordie is that you're going to find.
Good.
It's coming up.
So a little advertisement for his channel. Good for him.
Welcome back to my channel, Tyneside Life. My name's Eddie. If you're new here,
hey,
I cover football, but also history and culture of Newcastle and the general Tyneside area. And this video is going to be a history one, and it's a subject that's the topic of some hot debate, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. A couple of things about this video, though. It's not going to be an in-depth historical record. I'm going to be touching on the broad points. Any inaccuracy in the historical record is purely by accident. Okay. But also, secondly, I'm not going to stand here and patronise you and tell you what is, who is and who isn't a Geordie, because that just wouldn't be right. What it is, I'm going to explore the history of it, so you have a better understanding of what a Geordie is, and you can make up your own mind. First of all, we need to explain, and I'm sure many of you there already know that Geordie is a derivative or a nickname of somebody called George. But where did the name George come from? Well, that its earliest record is Greek origin, going back a couple of thousand years. And it's my supposition that George came across to Britannia, these islands here, probably through the Roman invasion to about 2,000 years ago. Now, there are variations of the word George depending on the country of origin, because it went through old Greece, through the Roman Empire, in Europe, and eventually into Britannia. But there is Georgius, Georgius, and of course Geordie. But I can't find the origin of where Geordie became the nickname of George. It's a bit like, when did Andy become the shortened version of Andrew? I don't know. It's probably hundreds of years, but I did find a record of a Scottish kind of folk singer in the 1600s. He was referred to as George Geordie. So it goes back quite a few hundred years, this link between George and Geordie. Consequently, and there is anecdotal evidence, I can't find the root of it, but it seems that the people of Scotland and northeast England generally, where it became popular to sons who were called George, were then nicknamed Geordie. Now, you might be wondering why I'm stood next to the old town wall of Newcastle, which was built in the 13th and 14th century to keep out invaders, and in particular the battles and skirmishes that were had between us and Scotland. But the town wall does actually form part of the story, where the first kind of notion of where the term Geordies come from. I'm going to get into that right now. Now, in the early 1700s, England, in particular 1714, Newcastle, the town, was strategically and economically really important to the country. It was the fourth largest town in Britain, and it was just getting a grip and just taking hold of the Industrial Revolution, where we relied on heavily with coal production and transportation, but also with ironworks. And then actually in 1711, Newcastle had its first newspaper. So Newcastle was a really busy town. It took its taxes from the mining and transportation of coal, which was brought from various villages around the area, north and south of the Tyne, via staiths. They were put onto boats called keels, put onto bigger ships, and they were transported all around the country, in particular London. Now, during the early 1700s, our royal line became a little bit complicated. In 1714, King George I came to throne in England. He was from the House
King
of
George
Hanover,
I.
so he was German. He didn't speak a word of English or hardly any English, but he spoke German and French, and that upset the Scots in particular, which gave rise to the Jacobite uprising, who believed that their the annexed King James Edward Stuart should be put back on the throne. So that gave birth to the Jacobite uprising, which started in 1715. Now, King George I, like I said, he was German, didn't speak a word of English. His subjects used to ridicule him behind his back, of course, but he was also referred to as being quite unintelligent. So you can imagine at the time in early 1700s England that there was a lot of controversy about this new king. I don't imagine anybody was particularly fond or loyal of this particular king because of his overseas heritage. So the Jacobite uprising, which was about a 30-year period between 1715 and 1746, which eventually led to the Battle of Culloden near Inverness, was a sort of resistance. It wasn't specifically Scotland against England. There was division amongst the Scots and the clans. The Highlands and the Lowlands disagreed on this, but also as well there were parts of certainly Northumberland that supported the Jacobite movement. And in 1715, the Jacobites, in their first rebellion against the Hanoverian government and their army, happened when they brought the army south through Northumberland, which had a lot of support. A lot of men joined the Jacobite rebellion, but when they got to Newcastle, Newcastle shut its gates to the Jacobite rebellion. In fact, at the time leading up to this, Newcastle actually detained about 700 Jacobite sympathisers, which would have been contained within the town walls of Newcastle, but also the surrounding fishing and pit villages around the town wall. And this leads on to theory number one, that the Geordies were King George's men, as if it's a kind of sense of pride of George, you know, St. George, when the...
Okay, I did assume it had something to do with one of the King Georges. I do know the history that he's talking about with the Jacobites. I'm familiar with all that. But yeah, okay, so I thought it might have something, so this is theory one. Thought it might have something to do with that.
Slaying dragons, we're the Geordies. Let me know what you think, but I don't think for a second with this new German king, and I'm speaking in the context of early 1700s England, that the men of Newcastle particularly wanted to be part of this government army. I don't think for a second they were going around puffing their chests out and claiming themselves to be King George's men or the Geordies. There is nothing in the historical record that suggests
he doesn't think
at
so.
all, and certainly I don't think it was like that. In fact, all things being considered, I think most people of the region probably wanted to join the Jacobites, but Newcastle, like I said earlier, had this strong economic link with London in particular, with the transportation of coal and with it getting into ironworks, etc. But what is well, in fact, the only thing that's in a historical record is a folk song, like a poem from the Jacobites about the word Geordie. There's nothing else in the historical record that refers to anything to do with Newcastle. In this song called Come Ye Oer Frae France, it's a song that ridicules the Geordie German, King Geordie. They call him the Geordie whelp in this particular song, and it satirises his marital problems. There's nothing about Geordies coming from Newcastle at this point. So that's a theory that I don't think holds any water whatsoever, because that's the only reference. And certainly, as I've just said, I don't think for a second the men of Newcastle were going around pumping their chests saying, we're King George's men, we're the Geordies. And in addition to that, It wouldn't be solely exclusive to Newcastle, because if it was King George's men, that would refer to the whole army from London up to Newcastle would have been referred to as the Geordies, and they weren't. If you'd like to see more videos like this and be notified the moment I release the next one, make sure you hit the subscribe
to it.
So there you go, 1715, when Newcastle shut its gates to the Jacobites headed west down what is now Cumbria and were eventually defeated at the Battle of Preston. But this went on, like I say, till 1745, when there was a second rebellion under Charles Stuart, Bonnie Prince Charlie, where they were eventually defeated at the Battle of Culloden near Inverness. So that's that particular, what I believe is a myth, in terms of where a whole community were referred to as the Geordies. There's nothing on the historical record. It doesn't bear up to any historical scrutiny at all. The only thing, like I say, is that poem come folk song from the Jacobites ridiculing the Geordie German, King Geordie. So through the whole of the 1700s, I don't know if you know, but we had 4 King Georges in a row, and it was during this period where it became really traditional for firstborn sons, particularly in Scotland and the northeast region of England, to be called George, who were then nicknamed Geordie. So the term was really becoming quite popular. But this leads on to the second story of where the term Geordies comes from, and this one for me holds a lot more water, and that's to do with the mining industry. In 1815, George Stephenson invented the safety lamp for miners in this particular region, and it was called the Geordie lamp. So miners from this region, including County Durham, were referred to by miners from other parts of the country as the Geordies, because they used the Davy lamp as opposed to the George Stephenson Geordie lamp. So for 150 years or so, Geordies were pitmen, but also men who were called George and nicknamed Geordie, and that's where the term really started to catch a hold, where a whole community now was being referred to as the Geordies. And I think if you had said to a County Durham miner 100 years ago and suggested that they weren't a Geordie, you would have probably took their head off, because Geordies were pitmen from all over this region, from Newcastle, south of the Tyne, on the Tyneside pits, but also in County Durham. As you can probably begin to gather now, that this is really quite complex. The lines are blurred. There's no distinct geographical boundary of what a Geordie is and what a Geordie isn't. It's cultural, it's fluid, it's evolutionary. And what I find really interesting is that in recent decades, with the birth and sort of intensity of football rivalry, and the term Geordie is now associated with Newcastle United fans. It's the songs, but Geordies is chanted in St James's Park and wherever else the fans go, but also fans from other clubs around the country refer to Newcastle fans as Geordies. And what this has done, it's meant to be sort of a kind of a cultural appropriation now, where those people from Newcastle now are creating geographical boundaries across the term, taking ownership of the term Geordie to say things like, well, you're on the wrong side of the Tyne, or you have to be born in Newcastle, or you have to be born within 3 miles of the Tyne Bridge, which, as you'll see from everything I've explained with the history, is nonsense. That's just been invented in somebody's head. It just doesn't hold to any scrutiny, and it's certainly historically.
So he doesn't like the geographic.
Also, what that does is this kind of appropriation of the term Geordie to exclude others and fracturing the Geordie community. I don't think
he doesn't like that.
So that goes back around to the initial question of who are the Geordies, and I would say that nobody owns the term.
Owns it?
I've got no right to say who is and who isn't a Geordie, and neither has anybody else. And I would direct anybody watching this to go back to the very beginning with the English Oxford Dictionary version of what a Geordie is, because that's probably more or less what a Geordie is. If you identify yourself as a Geordie, then you're a Geordie. I'm from Gateshead. I identify myself as a Geordie, and that's absolutely fine. We all share the same industrial and cultural past and heritage. We're all from the same area, and we should all embrace that as part of the same community. So, as a matter of interest, going back to 1750 in England, if I was in the army at the time, I think personally I would have been deeply uncomfortable being part of the Hanoverian government military or King George's army. I think at the time, if I was around, I would have joined the Jacobites. I would have fought for what I believed in and stood up for something, but that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comments below about all of this. If you have some historical evidence that would add some deviation to this particular story, I'd love to hear it. But if you like the video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, and of course don't forget to subscribe
Do so.
so you get a notification every time I release another video. So until next time, catch you later.
Okay, well that was really good. Eddie, I think his name is Eddie. Very informative. So yeah, I didn't know. You know, to be honest, I thought it was related to George somehow. You know, at least the name George, but I wasn't sure because that's not a nickname for George here in the U.S. Yeah, there's not a nickname for George here in the U.S. If your name is George, that's it. Your name is George. So, but I thought maybe it came from the word George, and so he's saying that most probably was it George Stevens, I think he said, that invented the miner's lamp that they were using, and then others started referring to them as Geordies, as opposed to the folks that used the Davy lamp, I believe he mentioned. So that's interesting, and apparently he said George Stevens' nickname, I think Stevens was the last name, was he went by Geordie, the Geordie lamp. He liked that theory much better than the one going back to I'm so sorry. Much better than the one going back to King George the First and the Jacobites. So as far as the region goes, he's saying a lot of folks like to say, you got to be born in Newcastle, but they're appropriating that, in his opinion. And that if you claim to be a Geordie because you're from that region, not necessarily Newcastle, but nearby, then that's okay with him. I believe he said, who is he to say or anyone else to say? So that helps me a lot. That clears up a little bit of the questions I was having about why are y'all called Geordies? So what do you think? Do you have to be born in Newcastle? Are the folks down in Durham Geordies? I don't know. Let me know. Very interesting video, you know. I hope you enjoyed that. I just wanted some questions answered, to be honest. And I thought that he might be the one to give me the answers. So glad I watched that. He didn't give any clear definitions. I guess it's a little bit vague, but let me know what you think. I have appreciated all the comments from the Geordies and the subscribers. I like chatting with you all. And I definitely am coming to Newcastle. It's a lovely city. I believe I have a playlist. Yeah, I know I do. I have a playlist of Newcastle. So you can find all my videos there and this one will go there. And there'll be more that keep going there. So like he said about his channel, you know, like and subscribe, hit that notification so you don't miss any more upcoming video reactions to Newcastle upon time. And, you know, until next time, y'all take care.